Hello, welcome to the Sussex Smuggler. I'm Captain James Bollinger, and today what we've got is an absolute treat. Well, I certainly hope it's a treat for you. We're having a look well, as you probably know, I've been doing some coverage on the Amsterdam VOC wreck that was beached down at Bulverhythe in 1749 on the 26th of January. So I thought I'd give this a bit of a follow-up. And the reasons are, if you've watched the video at the wreck, it although despite being a very hot and sunny kind of day, I don't know kind of about it, but it was a lot of wind was coming across there from the east and cutting out a lot of the commentary that I was trying to provide for the video. But before we get on to that, I'd like to apologise for the podcasts that I've been putting up on Irish folklore. Now, they've uploaded, to my knowledge, okay, and just like today being live, anything can go wrong, of course. And when I played them back on YouTube, although despite passing all their editing stress tests of having all the features coming out, like the intro and the music and that hasn't happened for some reason. So I can only lie the blame with myself, I'm afraid. But it might be something we revisit in the future. But the sound quality is there and the stories are brilliant. By the way, I'm looking at some Sussex folklore now. I've got a terrific book that I'm having a read of at the moment that has provided a lot of eye-openers. But yeah, so anyway, getting back to today, I thought I'd try something different. I've actually got my vlogging camera up and running and connected for a better picture quality and sound as well. So hopefully this will come out all right. What I'm proposing to do today is, and anything can go wrong, it is live after all. If you see me reaching forward, it's to put banners and slides and photos up for you to have a look at. Yeah, so I thought I'd try a different angle with this my vlogging camera that doubles up as a webcam as well, which is terrific. Hopefully, I have been experimenting with it only just today and found that don't leave it on the autofocus is key. So look, I mean, I've got a brew. You get yourself a drink, get relaxed, and see what we can do. If you want to leave comments or questions or observations, I mean, I don't always get everything correct. I'm only human like everybody else. But if you've got a comment or a correction, please supply it. And of course, supply it in a nice way and provide your source as well, which is important. Because more often than not, people say, well, you got that wrong. But they just leave it at that. They don't say, well, this is my reading into it. Or this is the video that said something different or whatever. But please do. That would be helpful because we're all here to learn and we're all here to find out. And it's important, above all, that these local historic stories are kept very much alive and are documented on places like my blog, the sussexsmuggler.co.uk, and on YouTube, so that future generations can look back at this and work on what we found at the time. So anyway, as I say, get yourself a drink. This is to wet me whistle, so excuse me. Oh, lovely. So today's live show, as I said, is about the Amsterdam VOC, and it was completed in Amsterdam by the Dutch East Indies Company in 1748. And the idea, the design of her and the fleet and her sister ships was to sail out to her colonies in Java, today's Java, and stop at the Cape, drop troops and supplies off, and then go on to the East Indies, Java, and trade with the local economy there. And she'd be carrying all sorts of materials from bricks, guns, coins, silver, gold. Soldiers were obviously precious, to protect the colonies that were owned by the Dutch East India Company. And it also carried some passengers as well, I believe. Yeah, with a displacement of 1,100 tons. So that gives you an idea of the kind of cargo it could carry. I mean, displacement is an interesting debate within itself. As I've looked into it, it's the amount of water that is displaced by the vessel when it's afloat, and it also gives you an idea of how much it can carry. So there we have the Amsterdam VOC, VOC standing for the Dutch translation of the Dutch East Indies Company, or East India Company. So it's great, and you've got to understand she was a great statement for the company and for Holland, who were masters of the sea at the time. And I think I mentioned earlier, if I haven't, she was a mirror ship. So at the time of her leaving Amsterdam, especially Texel Island, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, there'd be one leaving Java, and they would cross and mirror each other. Obviously, the one leaving Amsterdam would be carrying the finances. The one leaving Java would be carrying the cargo. So they'd pass at some point. I'm not quite sure exactly at what point, but they would certainly pass. They would mirror each other. That was the plan behind it. Maybe they passed each other en route. I don't know. That was a design. Or they met at Cape Town. I don't know. I'd have to read into that. I don't honestly know. So if you've got a comment to make on that, I'd probably appreciate it. And any good books that you can get on the East India Company, I'm very interested in to have a read of as well, because they're quite intriguing. I know there's a YouTube series about the Batavia, which is an earlier ship that ran aground on the coral outside Australia. Very interesting documentary by Defragged History on YouTube, and I believe they're on Twitter as well. But anyway, returning back to the Amsterdam VOC. So she was completed in 1748. She was captained by a 33-year-old Captain Wilhelm Klump, who is a resident of Amsterdam, and she was completed in Amsterdam, from what I've read. Well, by the way, what I've read, here it is here. Let me just get rid of the banner off the screen for now. Should hide that, and we'll put that one on just for good faith. Here's the book here. I'll put the information of the book. It's Peter Marsden's The Wreck of the Amsterdam. It's a great book, terrific read, really easy to read. Lots of illustrations, photographs, maps, and very relevant material in there. And I say it's an easy read, very interesting, and it isn't just about the wreck of the Amsterdam. It's about the story behind it, the people, and the what happened, because there's a misconception around the state of the crew, but we'll get into that a bit later on. And if I forget, leave a comment, please. What I've got, if you see me leaning forward, you'll see that I'm reaching for something here, and that'll be the banner, and hopefully there might be some prompts on there that will help me remember along the way. But of course, it's live, so anything can go wrong, can't it? Or go right. It might go better than what I think. It's a terrific story. So in 1748, she pulled off with a skeleton crew from Amsterdam itself, and then moved to Texel Island, where she got loaded up with cargo and crew, which were ferried out to her. Klump joined his ship, I believe, is at Texel Island, because they'd ferry a lot of them, most of them, out there. Now, understand that there was some sort of press gang arrangement by the East India Company. I believe they were called crimps, and a lot of the crew were kept, and I use the word kept because that's what I read, kept in attics above houses in Amsterdam, in squalid conditions. And from what I read, and if I've understood it correctly from Marsden's book, that they'd have their sanitary up there with them as well, and they were undernourished, and they were the dregs of society from Amsterdam, and it was desperate. They were desperate people that signed up to crew these ships, and you'd sign up for 3 years. You'd get a pittance of pay, but at least you'd get, I say, fed, but you'd get a lot of maggot-ridden food and biscuits on board. So it shows that it was a way of working, I suppose, as a floating workhouse, if you like, at the time. So a lot of them were ferried out to the ship. They were already malnourished, probably with drink problems and all the nastiness of society that still, obviously, without trying to get too political, exists today. So they were all moved out there in November 1748. So as the story goes, they weighed anchor, set off from Texel Island. They hit a storm in the November out in the North Sea and ended up grounded back on the other side of Texel Island. Clump managed to get refloated again, and then bang, the same happened again with a different storm. Now, this really made matters worse because they spent Christmas on board the ship with the Amsterdam right through to January with the city in view of where they were. So that must have got morale really down. So he had to spend Christmas on board the ship. Now, it was fine for the 3 passengers and the officers because they had their cabins. So it was probably a bit of a better lot for them. But the crew, and there was something like 203 crew and soldiers on top of that, were in squalid conditions. And because the Amsterdam was carrying so much cargo, it was understood that they actually sectioned off a lot of the crew's quarters, so they were all crammed in with no privacy, with their sanitary as well all around them, and they'd still have to carry on with their ship's duties throughout this period. So, the story goes, the story goes that Clump and the crew managed to get the ship refloated in January, and they would sail with a fleet, I believe, of 5 ships, a total of 5 ships, and they were on their way. So the Amsterdam is believed to have overtaken and outran a lot of the fleet. It's gone past the Downs at Deal, the Goodwin Sands. She was sighted there, and that's how apparently they kept ship's news up to date through local observations. Obviously passed back through Lloyd's of London, and the VOC would have had their own representatives in London to see this news. News was then passed back to Amsterdam and regularly updated to officers' families and insurers and the company directors, all commercial, I can assure you. So she sailed on, and then Clump hit another storm. So what they thought, the experts thought he tried to do, was actually make a sprint for Portsmouth for harbourage and any repairs that potentially might to have to be undertaken. So he couldn't make Portsmouth. He got his charts out and looked at the VOC charts, which told him that that Pevensey Bay was a safe haven. So he tried to hide behind the cliffs in Pevensey Bay. And of course, she's bouncing up and down. He thought, I'll just ride this out for a day or two. So he dropped anchor in Pevensey Bay. And the storm went on and on and on for 10 days, I believe. And what happened was out there is that I think people, would be fair to say, were were scared out of their wits. The storm must have been awful. And I think it's probably one of the worst recorded ever. So with her anchorage and the movement of the ship, she's probably only described as a bit like a rag doll being thrown around in the sea. So she's hit the seabed and lost her rudder. So she has no direction, no control. She hasn't furled any sails, and it's not looking good. So on the 25th, Clump must have gone to bed a worried man, and if he slept at all, he's got problems. He knows he's got problems. He can't move the ship. He can't steer it. So it's thought that the crew mutineered. Now on the excavation, Marsden, who wrote the book, he actually carried out the excavation as well with a couple of hundred other people, found some VOC flattened musket balls, and he concluded that that there was quite possibly a mutiny on board. And if you think about it, with the conditions of the storm, the bad luck that they'd had, and of course the sanitary, the conditions that they were living in on board, was probably enough to bring everything to breaking point. So we think what they did was basically threaten or mutinied on board. So Clump then agreed, I've got to beach the ship. And it's thought, excuse me a minute, that after the Amsterdam hit the seabed with its rudder, that they built a temporary rudder, because skillfully then sails the ship. And bearing in mind, most of the crew may not have been cooperating with him, so we don't know how he did it, but he's definitely done it. He's done he's put the bow in first onto Bulverhythe Beach, so he's come out of Pevensey Bay somehow, probably with the wind. A limited series of rudder, and he's come along. Now, he wouldn't probably know anything about Bulverhythe Beach, whether he was going into sand, shingle, mud. There was a dash for hope. In his mind, he faced a mutiny, he was in a dreadful storm. He had to save the ship, he had to save its cargo. There was a lot of silver on board, and there were 3 prominent passengers on board as well. That was his dilemma. So off he went. This is probably an understatement. Off he went, and he managed to get the ship steered onto Bulverhythe Beach. Bow first, so that's the front, the bowsprit, the lines here, the little room there, the electrical lines here, the very similar to the VOC, onto the beach. Now, all that ship, Eversfield comes into play. He was the local landowner around Bulverhythe. Now, to say Leonard's would have been built at the time to 1835, so Hastings was very much a fishing village, with John Collier, the Surveyor General, I think it was, who was a busy chasing walkers, gang and smugglers. So Carpenter managed to beach the ship bang onto the Bulverhythe Beach, first punting, the right, that's it, was safe. Now, what they did was that they got all the precious cargo was in Clump's carrying silver. But nobody was allowed to leave the ship, so the royal officers, himself and crew, I believe there was a negotiation of extra payment for the crew of something like 10% of the value of the silver. Got most of the cases off and guarded on the beach. That's my understanding in the book. No one was allowed to leave. Now, Lord Eversfield turned up and described the arrival of the Amsterdam as something like a floating tavern had arrived, because all he could hear was a lot of drunken singing going on, probably celebration, to be fair, of the crew who took part in the mutiny, opened up all the alcohol that they could find, the gin that was being carried, in sea chests, and they were all getting intoxicated on that. So they were having a right old time on it. I think Clump used that as an opportunity to get what precious cargo he could off. Now, the Amsterdam at the moment stands at roughly about 8 to 10 feet in height, and that's at the moment. So, and that's without its forecastle, quarterdeck, poop deck, which were burnt, destroyed in a very primitive salvage operation by the Dutch East India Company at the time. Try and get into the hold, they burnt them off, and that happened much later on in 1749. You're probably looking at, it's probably much taller back then. I wouldn't like to say what it was, but at the moment, with it being sunk into the beaches, it's about 8 to 10 foot tall. So you had to hoist all these sea chests over with this precious cargo on, and then get it guarded. To which he at some point liaised with the town mayor of Hastings and said, "This is my problem." Now the town before that was aware that the Amsterdam was in Pevensey Bay because shall we say a fishing boat, which may have doubled up as a smuggling vessel, went out to it and offered its help, and Clump, before beaching the Amsterdam, said no, but it got so much, and obviously the mutiny and the storm, he fired the cannons off in distress, because I believe the 26th of January at the time was a Sunday, and in, I think it was St Clement's Church in Hastings, they heard the cannons going off, so they all made for the beach, the mayor included, and there was the Amsterdam sat there. So the mayor sent for the army, which was slow in coming. Wreckers turned up, in particular a local smuggling gang by the surname, the leader was Watson, and because the crew most of the crew were drunk, they weren't interested in what was going on. The officers and the passengers, who were prominent people, were boarded in Hastings, and the wreckers climbed on and took the remaining silver after breaking into Clump's cabin. Now the mayor of Hastings turned around and said, "Right, for every ingot that was taken, I'll give you 2 guineas. Most of the silver ingots were returned, because obviously the dilemma that you've got is then selling the stuff on without too many questions being asked, but not all of it, because it turns out this gang were connected to France and Holland for smuggling, and I believe it's quite possible that they moved the silver over to Holland, and it's quite possible that they bought contraband goods with it. And of course, in Holland or France, wherever they went, it might have been melted down and turned into coins. Who knows? But most of the ingots were returned, but some weren't. So that leads to a very interesting story. So there we have the beached Amsterdam, and of course, as I mentioned already, Clump then made for London by a 3-day stagecoach ride. Some of the crew that had died, it's believed by popular belief, especially Wikipedia and some websites, that they died of yellow fever. Although that may be possible, we've got to understand that most of the crew joined exhausted and malnourished anyway, and it's believed, I think there's a local church in Bulverhythe, I haven't visited it yet myself, it's in a ruined state now. I think it's St Mary's at Bulverhythe, but again, please do correct me, where a lot of the Dutch bodies were buried from death. But a lot of the crew were repatriated to Holland sometime later anyway, with Clump making for London anyway on the 3-day stagecoach ride to go and meet the VOC representative down there. So they then returned to the ship, and they burnt the forecastle deck, the poop deck and the quarter deck, to try and get access to the hold. It was unsuccessful because the wood was so well engineered and built. They didn't get anywhere with it, but they just destroyed the deck. So the Amsterdam was left for a considerable amount of time, and it eventually sunk into the sand and mud, and the sea then started to cover it. The Victorians would visit it and cut pieces of wood off of it as souvenirs, but it was never interfered with until the late 60s and 80s. The 60s excavation was slightly clumsy, and they used a digger to go around it and see what they could find with the ship. They found things like boxes of or sea chests of wood and clay pipes that have been dumped overboard, they reckon, and some things are found on the seabed nearby. But it turns out the beach is actually getting lower and lower. So one day, maybe in 1,000 years' time, the Amsterdam will be a bit more visible, and who knows, all of it might be visible. But it was Marsden in the early 80s that led a proper professional, under-financed excavation of the Amsterdams, and it's now that I will turn to the slides and photos that I've taken out of the book, and some of them are my own as well. So let's just have a little look, have a quick slurp of the brew. So if you bear with me, I've done a lot of talking. So if we have a look, you're probably wondering, as a lot of people do, we need my glasses for this, so bear with me. There we go. Right, that's better. Okay, let's have a look here. You're probably wondering what the Amsterdam actually looked like in its complete form before its very distressed look. Let's get this slide up here now. Okay, should look something like this. There I am. You'll just see this. It's just being uploaded. Bear with me. There we go. That's what she looked like from the back. Gotta say, what a handsome ship. Look at all the I'll draw your attention there to the back artwork there. Look at it. Absolutely gorgeous. An absolute statement if you were to see that on the high seas. I haven't got a picture of the front, but I believe at the bowsprit, which is the mast at an angle that comes out the front here. I don't know if the cursor is showing up on this. There would be a lion's head, but she carried something like, what was it, 40 guns? So 40 odd guns. Oh, that's not going to work. No, that's not a problem. Okay, well look, there. That gives you a great picture there of what she would have looked like in all her glory. That's actually the replica ship in Amsterdam. So there we go. 40 guns. I think it probably had more. Yeah, the back. Look at the ornate, the decoration of it. Absolutely beautiful. You can see at the top there's some decoration in red. I can't quite make that out, but hopefully I might get out there one day and to Amsterdam, maybe next summer, and actually look at the replica. But she's totally gorgeous. I'm sure you'll agree. A massive ship. Look at that. Very imposing, to say the least. Okay, let's just respectfully get rid of her. There we go. She's great, isn't it? Live. There we are. Then you're back to me. Yeah, great. A fantastic, very majestic looking ship. Gorgeous, totally gorgeous. Amazing they haven't made a film about it, really. Quite tragic. Don't let Hollywood get hold of it, though, please. Okay, now when Marsden excavated the ship, I mean, a lot of the cargo it's worth mentioning, is still down there in the hold. And when he got a hatch to it, I think they fixed a metal hatch to it. And what they did when they got in there, they bulked it out with sandbags, but they got some of the cargo out. A lot of it is it's still down there. Some of the silver, because what the crew did, they did their own private trading, which the company turned a blind eye to. So they would take their own money that they'd raised, borrowed in Clump's case. He borrowed money, so he owed money by the time he got back to Amsterdam to his creditors that he was hoping to use to trade privately on a successful trip. But of course, this trip wasn't successful, so he'd gone back to Amsterdam as a 33-year-old with a young family as well, and owed creditors money. And by the way, Wilhelm Klump went on to a very successful career as a captain well into his 60s. Despite this happening, the company found him not guilty of any wrongdoing or liability. They said that he acted with professionalism and did the best he could in some very difficult circumstances. But anyway, turning back to the excavation, a lot of the items are down in Hastings Shipwreck Museum and Hastings Museum. Again, hoping to get there, maybe do a bit of a vlog and some coverage with that. But one of the things I took from the book that they found, which I was really impressed with, is the, let's have a look here. There we go. Is a pair of cufflinks. Just coming up on the screen now. Stroke of luck. There we go. It's coming up now. You should see that. Actually, my better half actually made some replicas of these out of some old buttons we found. Quite lucky, really. These. Just waiting for them to upload. There we go. That's straight out of the book by Peter Marsden. You can see that basically, yeah, they're buttons with a shank or a link. You could have put a chain through there, linking them up. Some pictures. I'm not quite sure who the pictures are, but I've done some separate research, and it could have been of a loved one or something you believed in, or whatever. I mean, I don't know who that is, but officers certainly would have worn them. And that was excavated up by Peter Marsden's expedition out there. So that gives you an idea of what they found. I mean, there's lots of bottles. Red wine was found. Gin was found. There's all sorts of tobacco boxes. These ornate tobacco boxes were actually to die for. Cannons have been salvaged, although I believe some of the barrels have gone missing. A lot of the stuff is down at the Shipwreck Museum in Hastings. So I'll try and get down there and have a look-see as to what, and get back to you guys online, and we'll see. I have got photos somewhere, but I'd rather redo it and give you an idea of scale, because what the Amsterdam did, it gave us an idea of what life was like in 1749. So yeah, that's a bit of a snapshot, if you like, of what they found. Big shout out there to Reeves Gallows and the privateers defeat, even with the background music. Okay, let's have a look here. What else have I got? I've got some more slides. Look, we've had the cufflinks. Let's have a look. What's this? Yeah, hold on. It's just up. The picture's just uploading. What have we got here? Right. Okay. Can add this to the stream. Oh, there we go. It's coming up now. Okay. Told you it was live. That's good fun. That's good fun. Right, there we go. You should see what the image will prompt my commentary. You see, I take these photographs, make these slides. I put something like Amsterdam VOC cufflinks. I know what it is. I put something here, and I can't see it because the title's too long. But there we go. Let's see what comes up. Ah, there we go. It's the plans. It's a very useful cross section, and I'll blow this up myself. I can take you through it. If you can zoom in, would be great. So you see down the bottom diagram, you can make out if the beach is cut away. There we go. If the beach is cut away, there to the left and right, you can see a line, beach level. So if you just use an imaginary line to cut across the forecastle, gun ports, quarterdeck, poop deck, it gives you an idea of what's left, the structures that are poking through, the bulkheads, if you like, that are poking through. So all of that down there into the hold is still remaining. So there you are. I think that's an important reference. Is the beach level right there. So that's what you can actually stand. If you go down to the beach, be very careful. Go with someone or let someone know you're going. Take a mobile phone with you, and look out for dog walkers. That's a good sign, I think. If they're walking along the shoreline, if you're going to visit the wreck, that is, be careful because the sand's very soft and you will sink. After all the ship sunk, you will sink. I've been talking to some reliable locals about it, and they've told me some of their experiences, which would be quite frightening for some people. So be very careful when you do go down there. I'd recommend going with a guided tour, but at least take someone with you, please. And if you keep moving your feet. If I were you, because you'll be dictated to by the tide as well, keep around the front of the structure so you're nearest the shingle and the sand. But anyway, look, there's the beach level. So that gives you a cross section across there, and the 8 foot, 10 foot measurement starts there all the way down to the crossed lines at the bottom. So that gives you an idea of what's under there, and it's bulked out, by the way, with sandbags into the hole to stop the whole thing crushing in, because Marsden described it as pretty much being intact, although he just ran out of time funding and the tides, so he couldn't get to everything, but a lot of it is still down there. The top diagram is like an aerial view that gives you an idea of where the hatch is, and a layout of everything from the top hole in that they made at the bow there, the bow being the front. That would be the beach where it is, and it's worth mentioning as well that the vessel, if you look towards the stern, which is the back, the stern at the bottom here, I hope the cursor's coming up, that's where it's sunk at an 18-degree list at the back. So if you fully appreciate how it's sunk as well, a terrific picture. It said, it spoke 1,000 things to me when I saw that in the book. So we'll exit the full screen. Hopefully I'll bring myself back into this somehow. Let's have a look here, play around with this now. Oh, there we go, everything's coming back now, hopefully. It was important to blow that up because give an appreciation. Oh, there we go, look, there we're back on. That alone to me as a shipwreck speaks a million words, tells me so much information. I'll just remove that from stream. I have got one more to show you. Okay, let's just find it. This is the actual wreck. Now I've never seen it in this state. Because as I say, you're very reliant on the tides of the VOC, not the tides of the VOC, to see the Amsterdam VOC. So when I've been down there twice, and you get some structure coming out at a low tide, but you need a real low tide to see everything. I'm just uploading a picture that should come up on the stream very soon of what it looks like, it warts and all, if you like. And when you're actually down there, you fully appreciate how big it is. There she is in all her current glory. Absolutely massive. It is a beast, I have to say. 1,100 tons of her, which she was originally built, skillfully beached onto Bulverhythe Beach, I have to say. It still does have a skeleton in it, by the way, and it's this cabin boy, and they can't work out why he was so far down into the ship. His name is Adrian Welgeveren. He was a cabin boy, or one of the cabin boys that was commissioned on the ship. And there he is. That's his name. He part of his, I say bodies, part of his skeleton has been recovered, the legs, but the upper half, the torso half, is still down there. So really, it is an official grave. And of course, the interesting thing is all these people, the crew, the passengers, the officers, in terms of today, their families are still notified of their property and where their ancestors are buried or kept, which is interesting, isn't it? And because they have to put it, I believe they had to put it through Lloyd's of London at the time for a year for their relatives to come and claim their belongings and their probably what would be their inheritance and property. But there is the Amsterdam in all its glory. You can see what I mean about the muddy sand in the beach. It's I believe the wreck, it does qualify under the Shipwrecks Act of 1973. Excuse me. Done a lot of talking. It's a protected site, and I believe it's owned, I think, by the British government. I think so. To vandalise it, wreck it, would be you'd be breaking the law. And if you've got any daft ideas about trying to recover the treasure, you've got no chance. The cargo that's down there, you've got no chance. Just be respectful of it, and it potentially could be a dangerous site, as I've already said. So be very careful down there. You are messing about with still the sea. So there's the wreck, and you can see a lot of the structure. That's the complete structure of it. What's left at the surface. I've never seen it like that. I've only seen partial structure on a low tide. But yeah, that's the Amsterdam. Let's just remove that. The picture there. I'm back again. There we go. Yeah, great stuff. Look, thanks very much for taking the time to tune into this. It does mean a lot. Lots of shout outs to all of you on the channel and the people that read the blog. Thank you very much. This has been, as I say, another part of the coverage of the Amsterdam VOC. So I believe this is part 3, I think now. It's been brilliant doing this. I will revisit the wreck and I'll get onto the museums, and I want to go and see the replica ship in Amsterdam, something that really interests me. So let's just take this down. Okay, hide that. So please like, comment and subscribe to to the channel, share the videos, please look it out there. So yeah, look, thanks for watching. And I'll keep you later with reading the pianos, a bit of music, a bit of content, if you might say. And take myself off the stream. And I hope you get to you again live, planning another Hastings trip. Might even be in the Crime Museum, so I don't know. So there we go. Take me out of it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, share. More Facebook. Come and find me. You've been watching the Sussex Smuggler. I'm Captain James Bollinger, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Take care.